Agoge, or Spartan education, ancient Greek, mo omega si, conduct, movement. Modern Greek, Spartiatikia Agoge, was, along with the radical rejection of individualism and the militarization of all private and collective life, the most characteristic and defining feature of Lacedaemonian society. Archaic period. From the 8th to the 7th centuries BC, Spartan education was dedicated to the mastery of arms. Young Spartans no longer had to seek, as in previous centuries, their personal Homeric ideal of glory, but rather collective glory, the victory of the city. The poet Crypteia captures this ethical novelty well. It is beautiful to die, in the front line, like a brave man fighting for his country. Archaic education, however, retains features of Homeric education. Wrestling, athletics, and equestrian sports remain of great importance. At the Olympic Games, from 720 BC to 576 BC, of the 81 known winners, 46 were Spartans. In the foot race, we know of 36 winners, of whom 21 were Spartans. Music was immediately next in importance during this period. Sparta was the musical capital of Greece. The various Hyacinthian, Carnean, and even Gymnopedia festivals were merely a pretext for highly refined dance competitions that required specialized training. The Agoge. From the 6th century BC, around 550 BC, education changed in nature. It became known as the Agoge, although this name actually dates back to the Hellenistic period, an educational system that was profoundly original for its time due to its characteristics. As it was compulsory, it constituted an indispensable requirement for full citizenship. For Xenophon, those who have not passed through the Agoge are lower-ranking citizens who cannot access magistrates or elite corps, or, according to Plutarch, are directly deprived of their civic rights. On the contrary, there may be cases of non-citizens, presumably helots, who, upon being accepted into the Agoge educational system, become free men. These are the so-called mothakes. See helot. Collective. Unlike personalized education with a slave tutor, in the style of other Greek cities, the Agoge is structured in stages for groups of children of similar ages. Organized by the state, it is the city government itself that manages public education as one of its main missions, which will earn the praise of Plato and Aristotle. In addition to having specialized magistrates, the ephors personally carried out daily supervision. From this moment on, citizens are prepared for military life from childhood. At the age of 7, they were removed from their families and began living in military-style barracks with their peers, undergoing training that sought to turn them into perfect warriors, concerned only with the good of the state. Although the Agoge is attributed to Lycurgus, no historical reference to it is found until the 4th century BC, specifically in Xenophon's Republic of the Lacedaemonians. From the time a Spartan was born until the age of 6, Sparta implemented strict eugenics aimed at producing healthy and strong citizens. According to Plutarch, Life of Lycurgus, upon birth, a child was examined by a commission of elders at the Lesh portico to determine whether they were beautiful and robust. If not, they were taken to the Apothetus, a ravine at the foot of Mount Taygetus, where they were either thrown or abandoned on a peak. The aim was to eliminate all unproductive mouths. If the child passed the test, they were entrusted to their family for raising. During their stay in the family, the child was not pampered. The wet nurses were specifically instructed to raise them without swaddling clothes that would restrict their growth or weaken their resistance to cold and heat. The young child was forbidden any kind of fussiness, whims, or tantrums, and had to get used to being alone and not fear the dark. It was also customary to bathe them in wine, since there was a belief, as Aristotle himself affirms, that it caused convulsions, causing sickly natures to succumb quickly, and strengthening, on the other hand, healthy ones. Spartan wet nurses came to enjoy fame in some regions of Greece. For example, Amyclae, who raised the Athenian Alcibiades, was Spartan, from 7 to 20 years old. Upon reaching the age of 7, Spartan children left home and were placed under the authority of a paidonome, a specialized magistrate who supervised their education. They were integrated into an agele ugili, or barracks, a type of children's military unit under the command of an older boy, the Irem, who was 19 years old. They then learned to read and write. According to Plutarch, this aspect was reduced to the indispensable minimum, as well as to sing mainly the elegies of Crypteia, which served as marching songs. But the essential part of their training consisted of toughening them physically through wrestling and athletics, and learning how to use weapons, how to march in formation, and above all, how to blindly obey their superiors and always seek the good of the city. Plutarch expresses it this way: Lycurgus accustomed citizens to not knowing how to live alone, to always be, like bees, united for the public good around their leaders. The state assumed guardianship until the age of 20. During childhood, all emphasis was placed on rigor and discipline. These two principles are quintessentially Spartan. Boys' hair was cut short. Later, when they were young, it was long and well-groomed. They usually went barefoot. And by the age of 12, they were only allowed one hemation, a single-piece woolen cloak per year, and no chiton, the customary short tunic tied over the shoulders. In fact, most of the time in the gymnasium, they spend their games naked and filthy, because they are rarely allowed to bathe. Food rations are reduced to the bare minimum, forcing them to steal if they want to avoid starvation, or so their Irenic commands. If caught, they are severely punished, not for the theft itself, but for their clumsiness in committing it. They sleep on a bed of reeds collected from the Eurotas, which they must cut by hand without any tools. Despite all this, the children and young men have servants who look after them, except during the Crypteia. When they became ephebes around the age of 15, they grew the long hair typical of soldiers, clean and perfumed, in honor of the belief attributed to Lycurgus, who believed that long hair made handsome men more attractive and ugly men more fearsome. The careful attention that was lavished on rhetorical education in Athens and other Greek cities was, in Sparta, oriented toward developing maximum expressive economy, to the point of making Spartan conciseness in speaking proverbial. Young people were expected to express their ideas solidly, but briefly and sharply, as well as with grace. The entire city watched over the discipline of the young. Any citizen or older peer could scold the children or punish them with physical punishment, starving them, biting their thumbs, whipping them, etc. This harshness, far from being an inheritance from Lycurgus, would increase over the centuries in a manner completely unrelated to the true military needs of the city. Thus, during the Pax Romana, when Sparta had become an unimportant settlement in the province of Achaea, the hazing ceremonies at the sanctuary of Artemis Orthia, ritual combats involving battles over piles of cheese placed on the altars, became the sadistic ritual of dymastagosis, in which children, naked and exposed to the sun, were flogged to death. Children volunteered as it was a great honor to demonstrate their resistance to pain to the world before the avid gaze of spectators from all over Greece and other provinces of the empire. During adolescence, special emphasis was placed on eidos, modesty, and decency. In early adulthood, particular emphasis was placed on emulation and competition, primarily to become one of the hippies. From the age of 20, young Spartans continued to live in barracks and formed groups of ball-playing spheres. All this training made the Spartans the most feared soldiers in Greece, and probably among the best fighters of antiquity. The education of girls, women received also a state-run education based on gymnastics, wrestling, and athletics, whose main purpose was to enable them to bear healthy, strong children. The goal was to combat traits considered feminine, grace, and culture, while strengthening the body. Spartan women usually wore the archaic peplos, unsewn down the side, which sparked jokes and lewd comments among other Greeks, especially the Athenians, who called them the phantomrides, those who show their thighs. In religious ceremonies and festivals, they went naked, as well as in public athletics or wrestling competitions. Female education also sought to minimize feelings. Marriage should be nothing more than an opportunity to produce future warriors. Even the lending of wives between friends was considered normal, and it was not officially shameful to give one's own wife to someone younger and stronger who would produce equally vigorous children. However, the attitude toward bastardy was ambiguous, and clearly negative when it referred to kings. Thus, in 412 BC, the relationship between Timea, wife of King Agis II, and Alcibiades caused a scandal, and their son, Leotychides, was excluded from the throne for being a bastard. In return for their harsh upbringing, Spartan women enjoyed considerable freedom of movement, They could also inherit from their fathers, which gave them great independence from men, and they were usually the ones who managed the family finances. Pederasty. By the age of 12, according to Plutarch, it was common for women to have a lover among the older and more prestigious boys, the erasta, from the Greek erastes meaning lover. The relationship between the couple took on such an official character that in some cases, the ephors punished the erasta for a fault committed by his ephebi. Jealousy or rivalry over the same boy was frowned upon, however. Both rivals were expected to collaborate together in the upbringing of their beloved, the eronom, from the Greek eromenos, meaning beloved. At the same time, however, marriage and procreation were considered sacred duties to the city, to the point that single men of marriageable age were subject to particular taxes and public humiliation.